Welcome and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. As many of us get through the holidays, we try to explore many ways that we can find happiness, be a little more stable in our lives. After all, as we reach out and shop and find ways to fulfill those ways that keep us from being happy, such as trying to fulfill depression and get it to be a little bit better and brighter in our days, we sometimes find ourselves just missing the point. Joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program today is bestseller and author of more than 12 books. He has reached over 250 million people around the world with his particular methods and explored many techniques for dramatically a person's level of happiness. We'll learn what it is awakening and best shortcuts, and we'll also learn how to overcome stress and depression in just under 3 minutes. I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program today our guest, Jonathan Robinson. Mr. Robinson, thank you for joining us here on the program today.
Thank you, Daniel. I'm looking forward to this.
Now, a lot of people find that happiness is one of those things that seem elusive, that it's not on demand, and they kind of stew maybe in their misery. What's going on there that it seems so difficult for people to achieve this?
Well, life is stressful, first of all, and it's getting more stressful. But I think the main reason people miss happiness is that they are looking for it in the wrong direction. If you look in one direction for a sunset and it's in the other direction, that's not going to get you anywhere. So most people think that they could just control enough people and events in their life to be happy, or to be the way they want, they would be happy. But it really doesn't work very well. Rich people are not happier than poor people. Famous people are not happier than non-famous people. Whatever you think of the president's policies, here's a guy who's the most powerful person in the world, a billionaire, has everything you can imagine, but he doesn't look very happy most of the time. So the way to find happiness is you use certain methods and ideas to find happiness within yourself.
Now, how did you start on this path?
I started through the path of misery. I grew up in a really dysfunctional household, and I realized that I wasn't going to be able to control my family situation, so I started reading self-help books at the ripe old age of 12, and I got into things like meditation and yoga and hypnosis at that age, and I just kept on trying different things to find out what worked.
You bring up something I think is really important, and that is when people believe they're at a point in their lives, they just seem overwhelmed with perhaps depression or despair. Then they find, we call it a spiritual liberation, a religion. And I remember this from years ago from someone that I knew who became Christian. She was excited. She was yakking away about it, as a lot of people tend to when they first get into that honeymoon phase of something new. And pretty soon, lo and behold, about 3 to 4 months, which was all it took for this person, she came to me and she says, I go to church, and I do all the things that I think I'm supposed to do, but I don't find myself any happier. And I simply asked her, what made you think going to church and finding a religion was going to do that for you?
Mm-hmm.
Do you find that a lot with people out there as you encounter people?
Yeah, in a way, depression or misery or anxiety can all be good motivators to, restart your search. But it really comes down to finding what works for you. And if you've only been told by your religion that the only way to happiness is this one way, and that way doesn't work for you, you're screwed. So I encourage people to try a bunch of different ways, and I think people need different things at different stages in their life. And there's also a bunch of science now as to what really works and what doesn't. So you can make educated guesses that say starting a gratitude journal is probably going to help, or doing a bunch of techniques in my books that are backed by science will probably help. because they help with 90% of people. For example, antidepressants are a major industry, but they only work for 7% of people, according to science, where there are some methods that only take 90 seconds a day that have been shown by science to be 10 times more effective than antidepressants. But, nobody has an advertising budget to let those techniques out, so most people don't know about them.
Certainly something you have to find.
Yeah.
But, it's like the important things in life. When the student is ready, the teacher appears. And you've certainly had your share of people through your lifetime. For instance, you had spoke with people such as Oprah Winfrey and the Dalai Lama. What kind of insights? I mean, these are people, especially, that if people looked into their lives would realize you may see them as they are now, but their path was just as bumpy and nonlinear as anybody's. Believe me, and I always say to people, especially if you're embarking on a particular path, let's say you have a goal, we'll keep it simple. You want to be a musician or you want to be an actor, okay? And you get in there and you're starting to roll up your sleeves and you're getting ready to do the work and you realize, oh my goodness, this is actually work. This is hard. How do people get through this? And I simply say, why don't you pick up a biography of some people and realize the kinds of things that these overnight successes, as they're called, have actually been through and what they still go through. You would, it's as my wife would say, if you were to take all the world's problems and put them in a big giant pile, you'd gladly take yours back.
Yeah. Yeah, the Dalai Lama had most of his friends and family killed because the Chinese were trying to keep him, subdued. Oprah was raped twice by the time she was 14, had a stillborn child at age 15, was put into the retarded people's class. These are people who had major challenges. And yet they both are very happy, and they are now the number one and number two most loved people on earth. So they did something right. So I got a chance to interview them. I interviewed Mother Teresa. I interviewed people like, Deepak Chopra, Wayne Dyer, all these people, asking them for their best idea or method to be happier. And they all came up with really good stuff, The Dalai Lama said he practices doing at least 2 acts of kindness every day to the people around him, because he finds that when he's kind to people, that makes him happier. And in fact, science shows that this is true. The quickest way to boost your own happiness level is to do an act of kindness for a stranger or friend. When I talked to Oprah, she had a method known as 3 good things that she does, which I describe in my book, Find Happiness Now, which is something that takes about 2 minutes a day, where you focus on something good that happened that day, and you trace it back to how you helped to create that. And these things sound, like almost hokey, but they really work. They work a lot better than antidepressants, a lot better than money, a lot better than all the things that we're told or hypnotized to believe will make us happy, but really don't.
I like that. You also mentioned something, too, about a gratitude journal, but it can actually be even simpler than that, because I'm not one who likes to sit down and write things. Occasionally I do, but it's not a habit I get into, perhaps like some people. But however, we had a guest many years ago, and he brought up, it was a really fun little book, and it was talking about how to be grateful for all the things that you don't typically become grateful for. And he says, as you do that, as you can become aware and recognize these simple gratitudes, you'll realize how much more of that you have in your life than the bad stuff. We tend to look at the bad things, and when you really take a serious look at it, it's maybe 1 or 2 things at best, maybe in some extreme cases, 3, 4, half a dozen at best. But you look at all the little gratitudes, and they're everywhere. For instance, give you an idea, the great feeling it feels when you pull out that T-shirt out of the dryer and you put it on and it's warm. Things like that. And if you pay attention to that more, you'll realize there's more of that around you.
Yeah. I have a funny story about that. Many years ago, a friend of mine told me he went to India to talk to this famous guru about gratitude, and the guru had given him what he called a magical mantra for helping him feel gratitude throughout his life. So I asked him, what is this mantra? And he said, well, I can't tell you. You'll have to go to India and get it yourself. Well, I always want the best technique, so I actually went to India just to get this, and, I traveled 20,000 miles. Have you ever been to India?
No, I haven't.
It's a hard place to get to and travel in, but I take a rickshaw for 4 hours. I get to the ashram. I finally get a chance to talk to this guru, and I say, what's this magical mantra you have for helping people feel gratitude? And he says, he leans into my ear to whisper it to me. He doesn't want other people to hear. And he says, whenever possible, repeat the following words. The mantra I give you are the words, thank you.
Well, there you go.
Well, I look at him, I go, that's it? I traveled 20,000 miles to get thank you? Are you kidding me? That's it? And he says, no. That's it is the mantra you have been using. That makes you feel like you never have enough. My mantra is thank you, not that's it. That's it will take you nowhere. so I looked at him. I was really pissed off. I said, well, thank you. And he said, no. You must say it from your heart many times a day. So when you eat good food, say thank you. When you see your child or a sunset or your pets, say thank you from your heart many times a day, and soon you will be filled with gratitude. Well, I was still upset, but I figured I traveled all this way. I might as well use what he said. So I got into a taxi, and there was air conditioning. It was 100 degrees out. I said, oh, thank you for the air conditioning. And then I get back to my hotel, and I Skype my wife. I say thank you for my computer, and then thank you for Skype. I'm talking to somebody on the other side of the planet for free instantaneously. Thank you to technology. I see my wife with our dogs. I say thank you for them, and tears go down my face. And she said, wow, that must have been some mantra you got. And I said, yeah, it really works.
Yeah, I know, and again, it's about the simplicity of things. And as you were telling me that story, I began to think about something, and I wonder how often you encounter this, and that is that I think people may think that life is more predictable than it actually is, and because of that, they may get a little bored. In other words, the mystery of life isn't there so much. How important would that be in a person's happiness?
It's definitely important, especially, as you get older, how to get back to that simplicity, that innocence, that appreciation. And I have a whole podcast dedicated to this thing called awakening. Awakening is how to get really present in life and in touch with that inner peace. So I interview people who are experts in this. The podcast is called Awareness Explorers. And we look at ways to do that even in a busy lifestyle. And, of course, like this podcast, it's free. And I interview, people like Deepak Chopra, the Dalai Lama, and I'm asking them, well, what are the ways we can get back to that childlike joy that we had as a kid, where everything is, a mystery and amazing. And that there are methods for doing that, for bringing us out of our doldrums and into the vibrant aliveness of now.
Now, I know one exercise was really unique, and it's one that I've shared with people, and that is being, it seems everybody's in a struggle to make more money, have more money in their lives, and I said, well, what you should appreciate is the abundance that you have all around you and how easily it can come to you. And what I share with them surprises them sometimes. But I've experienced this, and it's pretty wild. When you're walking along and you happen to see a penny, we've heard, see a penny, pick it up all day long, you'll have good luck. And say, well, here's what you really should, here's a way that you could also do this. When you pick up the penny, just simply hold it in your heart and just say, thank you. Okay? Put it in your pocket. Take it home. Maybe find a little jar and just put that penny in the jar. as you're ambling along through your day, each and every day, you'll start to realize, hey, there's a couple of pennies. Pretty soon it turns into a nickel, some dimes, quarters. I have actually found $20 bills just laying in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And I tell people that's that mystery that I was just talking about that we're sharing here is I think that we get so used to thinking we know what's going to happen around the next corner, that this day isn't going to be any different than the one before, like Groundhog Day, that I think we become complacent, in such a way that we don't think life is going to show us anything that we'll be excited about.
Mhm. Yeah, and you have to invest in yourself to make sure that you grow the important things, finding peace, finding love, finding joy, having adventure, because most of us are in like this mechanical river of mediocre life. I call it the mechanical river, a modern American mediocre life. and if you get caught in that river, you get swept downstream. So what we have to do is surround ourselves with either books or podcasts or people who help to inspire us, or methods that help to inspire us to rise above that mediocrity. And that's one of the reasons why I interviewed a lot of these people for my books and found what methods they were using, because I think success does leave clues. I was a suicidally depressed teenager, and now every day I feel great. Not all the time, but it's a huge difference. And just taking little steps forward, learning how to calm your mind, learning how to open your heart, is the path to a wondrous life.
Now, you say that you have methods that if people are feeling depression or anxiety, that within 3 minutes they can change that. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Sure. Well, let's give a half a dozen methods. I actually have 112 methods that take under 3 minutes to do.
The more the better.
That have been shown to dramatically improve people's lives, reduce depression, make them happier. But let me give 3 or 4 right now. One would be any type of exercise. Even 10 jumping jacks makes people feel better. Certainly going for a walk. Petting your dog or cat, that makes you feel better. An act of kindness to a stranger or friend, that makes you feel better. Taking 5 really deep breaths makes you feel better. And this is before we get into even more specific techniques, like I have on my website, Finding Happiness, that deal with very ones that take a little bit longer to explain, that are even more impactful. But these are like generic things. Playing a favorite song that you like and dancing around or just singing to it makes a huge difference. So there's a lot of things, and what we have to do is make sure that we find something that works so well for us that we're willing to do it periodically.
Now, how do you feel technology has, I guess, played a role in people feeling that anxiety and depression? Because here's something where they have made available now instant gratification, such as, the rat pushing the button to get fed, but then realizing, well, it's the same food all the time. I mean, what's going on there?
Well, technology is a double-edged sword, meaning that it can be used to make you more miserable and depressed and isolated, or it can be used to help you to achieve very lofty states. And it depends how you use it. A lot of us are victims of what I call WMDs, which stands for widgets of mass distraction. We look at our smartphones an average of 140 times a day, and that can't be healthy. We spend 7 hours a day looking at screens. That can't be healthy. But, technology, there's a lot of apps now that can guide you through meditations for free. There's podcasts that you can download, like yours or Awareness Explorers, the one I do, for free. There's the ability to connect on Skype for free with your friends across the world. So it's really how you use that technology. Studies show that people who spend a lot of time on Facebook end up being more miserable. People who spend a lot of time watching TV end up being more miserable. So you have to do things in moderation and find ways to tap into joy and peace that don't separate yourself from other people.
Yeah, it's really fascinating when you realize the simplicity of what you're sharing with us here today, and it seems that people make too many things too complicated, more than they need to be, don't they?
Yeah, and, there's a lot of stimulation, a lot of people trying to make things complicated. They make their living off of that. So, but people were a lot happier 50 years ago because they weren't dealing with so much technology and change all the time. But my feeling is that with the amount of change going on and stress going on, that hopefully that's a wake-up call that you almost have to learn how to effectively deal with stress. You almost have to learn how to find the peace within yourself, or you'll be miserable.
Right.
So in a way, the pace of modern-day life is helping to push us forward either into misery or into learning new ways to adapt.
Now, tell us about how people can find out about your books and perhaps even your podcast to find out more.
Well, I have a website called findinghappiness.com, and at findinghappiness.com, there's a lot of free stuff that people can download, audio, articles, things like that. And then my Awareness Explorers podcast, they can get at iTunes, and they can download that for free, or they can go to awarenessexplorers.com and download it directly from there.
Very exciting. Thank you so much for sharing all this with our listeners today. It's very exciting to be able to share with people tools and ways they can take a look at life and make things a lot simpler than the way they should be.
Well, my pleasure, Daniel. Thanks for asking me and putting out good work.
You bet. We want to thank you, the listeners out there, for joining us. You can discover more at beyond50radio.com. That is the number 50. We do encourage you to sign up for our weekly e-newsletter. Keep up to date with what's going on in the world of Beyond 50 as well as upcoming shows. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for joining us. This is the Beyond 50 radio program. And remember, live your day past halfway.